Yes, welcome to Home Studio Q&A for yet another week where I answer all of your questions about mobile and home recording. My name is Pete Johns and my passion is helping you create, record and release your best music. And I do that here on the channel through tips and tricks and tutorials and this weekly live Q&A. So if you are here live, if you're here on YouTube or Facebook watching me record this live and you've got questions, throw those down in the comments right now. If you are watching the replay or if you're listening to the podcast, don't stress at all. You can still get in touch with me. All my details are over at studiolivetoday.com. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel to catch the show live, and you can also get in touch with me. All of the different social media links and networks and all that good stuff is over there at studiolivetoday.com. So we've got a bunch of questions ready to go here from folks that have asked me through the week. So I've got nearly 20 questions there. And of course, we will jump in and answer some live questions as well as we go along. So let's get started. We will throw up my first question here. And this is one, I've had similar questions recently, but we're going to answer this one again and give it a little bit of extra information because I seem to get this almost every week. And that is this: says, when I record audio, and this is from Meme Supreme. Very cool name. When I record audio, I can hear some background noises. It's kind of annoyed me because I want to have a clean audio. So what effect should I use, as well as what recommended stats? So what settings to use? And yes, I'm in an average bedroom. So this is a super common question for folks in a home studio, doing home studio recording. Yeah, you're going to get some background noise. So the sort of noises that you'll generally get are from sort of hum and that sort of noise that you'll get from electrical devices around you, that low, like a computer fan or a fridge motor or something like that. Don't know why you got a fridge in your bedroom, maybe a bar fridge under your desk. Or you can get sort of that background hiss noise that you get. So there's different things that are generated by different things. So the room noise side of things, well, obviously there's some things you can do around trying to get some soft furnishings. We've talked about this before. Make sure that you don't have reflective surfaces. If you can, hang up some coats or some blankets or something soft that's going to reflect that sound. Otherwise, you're going to get it bouncing around. That sort of rumble sound, turn off any computers that you don't need to have on, turn off any electrical devices that may be generating a hum or a ground loop that's going to give you that hum. And then the big one is the quality of your gear is going to also dictate the background noise. So your microphone is going to introduce some of that hiss sound, some of that what we call the noise floor. And that's actually okay. Don't stress too much about that. It's in every recording. And every microphone, even the best gear, is going to pick up a little bit of that. But my number one tip for this, and I think I mentioned it in last week's show, is to turn down the input gain volume, because a lot of folks record too loud and that will pick up your voice nice and loud, but it'll also pick up any sounds, any background sounds in the room a little too loud as well. If you're looking for ways to fix it, to ways to actually improve the sound, EQ can help. So you can grab an EQ and actually drop down at some frequencies. So make sure that you're not emphasizing the frequencies where those sounds are. And in fact, you're dropping the volume at those frequencies. So if it's a low down rumble, put a low cut or what we call a high pass filter on there to make sure that that cuts off the low sound. If it's somewhere sort of a high hissing kind of noise, then move your EQ around, find that sort of hissing sound and drop it down there. So try and reduce the volume of those sounds that are sounding bad. So hopefully that gives you a few ideas and a few of my recommendations that can actually help you out when it comes to recording and reducing the background noise in your tracks. Let's move on to our next question here. This is from JMC Frame. This was in relation to my video about the difference between a mixer and an interface. So I'll summarize this one because it's a long question here. But basically, they're looking for a way to have EQ going out of their playback. So playing music through your PC, instead of going through an old big clunky hi-fi, can you go through a mixer? Now, you can. Mixers are really designed to input your sound and then output that out or record that to your PC or your Mac or your iPhone or iPad, not so much to send your PC signal. What you could do is get an audio interface that has output and then send those into a mixer, mix those down onto stereo channels, and then listen to the output audio on that. It's not really designed for that. I'd probably go more for some monitor speakers, and then you can actually do your EQing of your sound in the software that you're actually outputting from. So, and if you are wondering, why would you use a mixer over a USB audio interface? And I think I'm pre-answering a question that I have later in the show, actually, but we'll just jump into it now and then just cover it again later. But the reason that you'd want a mixer, so what a mixer does is it takes a whole bunch of different inputs. So I'm doing this show now, and I've got a mixer here that's got my microphone in one channel, my computer's coming through another channel, I've got my iPhone coming through a third channel, and then I can mix all those down into one stereo signal that I send back. And that's what I'm sending out to the folks watching live on YouTube, and what's then also being recorded for the podcast as well. Now, the beauty of a mixer is if I want the sound to go a little bit louder, a little bit quieter, my EQ's not sounding right, I need a bit more bass in my voice, all of that I can do on the fly. So I can mix it on the way in, and that's great for live applications. Now, if you are going to do all pre-recorded, you can use an audio interface, which is like a mixer, except it doesn't have EQ, doesn't have a compressor, doesn't have as much volume and gain control as you get from a mixer. So if you're starting out, you can get an audio interface that you just plug in your guitar, your microphone, your whatever, you record it, and then you can do all the processing afterwards. A mixer is great if you're doing live, so live streaming, live gaming, live podcasting, whatever, because you have that control over the signal on the way in. So hopefully that helps you out if you are wondering what gear to get, and if you are in the market for new gear, because tis the season. It's that time where we have the Black Friday and the Cyber Mondays, and the prices all start to go down. So if you head to studiolivetoday.com/gear, that is my one-stop shop for all the gear that I use and recommend. So feel free to check that out. Now, we've got a question here about powering a microphone. It says, I have one question. Will I need something to power the microphone, or can you just use a USB to Lightning? And they're using a Blue Yeti caster. So this is a question about USB microphones. So if you're using a USB microphone, and the question was, if you're using a USB mic with, say, an iPhone or iPad, how does it get its power? Can you actually power it up just using, will it have enough power to power it if you've got your Lightning to USB adapter and you plug that directly in to your USB microphone? The answer, unfortunately, is a big giant it depends, and it depends on a couple of things: the actual microphone you're using, how much power that's going to draw, the applications you're using on your phone or your iPad, and the phone or iPad itself. So an iPad Pro or some of your larger iPads will generally have enough power to just plug and play. If you're not getting enough power, this is why I recommend the Lightning to USB 3 adapter, because you can plug it into then a portable battery or to an AC and an AC wall outlet and get additional power directly into your microphone. You can also use something like a powered USB hub to make sure that your USB mic, and then you can hook up, interfaces and keyboards and MIDI keyboards and all sorts of other things as well at the same time, and USB flash drives and all that sort of caper. So unfortunately, so I haven't used a Blue Yeti caster, so I don't really know, but my recommendation would be grab a Lightning to USB 3 adapter. That way, if it does require that additional power, then you've got that additional Lightning port ready to go. And I've mentioned it before on the channel and on the show here, I'm sure, but the genuine Apple products are always much, much better than the generic off-the-shelf ones, because they tend to be a lot more reliable and they tend to work out of the box every time. I've had issues using the cheaper non-genuine Apple ones, and I know they cost a lot more. So yes, it is a trade-off there, quality and reliability, but if that's what you're looking for, then that's what you can go for. Alrighty, we'll grab one more question from the pre-questions, and then I'll jump to the live chat and see if we have questions from the folks that are kind enough to be here live. So we'll jump back to here. So this is from Milk Dude. Hello, Milk Dude. Forgive my iPhone ignorance, but if I'm reading it right, if you have a current or previous iPhone, you cannot connect to external storage device like a USB stick or a solid state drive or whatever. How do I go if I own a PC and an iPhone and want to transfer data from the iPhone? So if you want to transfer files from an iPhone or an iPad to a PC or a Mac or just to an external drive, how do you do it? Well, I'm glad you asked, because since iOS 13 has been released on iPad, or iPad OS 13, iOS 13, we now do have the ability to use flash drives. You can use flash drives, thumb drives, USB hard drives, and I've got a heap of videos here on the channel. I've already sent Milk Dude over to a couple of videos where I show how to connect up a USB hard drive and how to connect up a USB flash drive drive using a Lightning to USB 3 adapter. So yes, a lot of stuff around mobile recording, especially on iPhone and iPad, comes down to the Lightning to USB 3 adapter. And again, if you want to check one out, go over to studiolivetoday.com/gear. That is where you can see where to pick one up. But yeah, if you're connecting, you can use iOS 13. You can literally just drag and drop between your iPhone and iPad and that drive, and it can help you back up your photos. You can back up your music projects. You can back up your audio files, all of those graphics file, whatever you've got in there, you can actually send those across. Now, the speed is not fantastic. So what I actually use is an app called Audio Share. So if you're on iPad or iPhone, Audio Share is a great little app because it not only is an audio recorder that you can use to record in audio, but it also has Wi-Fi drive, which means that you can enable that on your phone. If you're connected to the same Wi-Fi network on any other device, on your Mac, your PC, your whatever, then you can just go to a web address and go to like a IP address, and then you can drag and drop between those. And the speed is as quick as your Wi-Fi network. So if you've got a decent Wi-Fi network, I can transfer a couple of gigabyte file in like less than a minute. It's really good. I use it for all my video transfers as well as audio transfers. It works a treat. All righty, let us jump back and see what questions we have here. So Daisy Air, thank you for being here. So Daisy, by the way, said, I came across your channel while researching Amuse. Your video on Amuse and DistroKid were incredible. I want to work with DistroKid in the future as well as continuing to use Amuse. Awesome, glad to hear it. So your question is, any advice for an unemployed singer-songwriter? I got an a cappella song set to release in 3 days thanks to Amuse. Awesome, make sure you send me a link to that one. I'd love to take a listen. Love me some a cappella. But I'm wanting to release better quality music in the future. I'm not sure how yet. This is a great question, a common question, a question I get a lot is how do you get started? If you want to be a singer-songwriter, you want to get out there and do it, how do you get started? Well, my personal experience is you start a YouTube channel and you start teaching people how to do it as you are learning to do it yourself. But clearly that's not for everyone. But components of that is what my recommendation is with this. And I'm by no means going to stand here and say, hey, do exactly what I did. It's worked for me and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, but I'm far from what you would call a successful singer-songwriter. I don't make a whole lot of money from the music that I actually produce. But again, I do a little bit differently because I use my music to actually for the education side of Studio Live Today. So it is really all about repetition here. So if you've watched any of my videos at the start, I say, what I want to do is help you create, record, release your best music. And it really is about that cycle. So Daisy, it sounds like you've actually started doing what you need to do, which is creating, recording, and now releasing music. The reason I say that is that the trap that folks fall into is that they'll create music, they might record music, they don't share their music, they don't share and release music. And why do you need to share and release music? Well, it's to get feedback. It's to find out what is working in your music and what is not working. So for instance, I recorded an EP back in 2017 on my iPhone and iPad in GarageBand. I released it and it was okay. Like it was, I look back on it now and I think, yeah, that was good. And I'm glad that I did it because the feedback I got from that EP helped me release another 3 or 4 singles. And then when I went to record and release my album, what I did is I released each song as a single first, got a bunch of feedback on that from folks. And then I was able to remix and remaster. And by the time I got my album done, I'd had the experience of about 30 songs in total. So the reason that I like the songs on my album and I'm happy with that release is because I spent that time. Now, if I hadn't released or shared any of that music and just kept working, released the album all at once, I don't think it would have been the same level of quality. I think there is so much value, and because we have things like Amuse and DistroKid where you can actually release your own music to Spotify and Apple Music and iTunes and all the places, I think it's a really good time to actually be using this method, which is create, record, release or share, and then get the feedback on board and then do it again, because we often have blind spots to our own music. And I'm not saying listen to everything everyone always says. You still need to make music that's right for you, but sometimes there's things that we don't know. I would mix my vocals really loud. So I have this tendency to mix vocals too loud. I got that feedback repeated times from repeated people. And then I went, okay, if I think the vocals sound exactly right in the mix, they're probably about 2 dB too loud. If I drop them down by 2 dB, they sound a little bit buried to me, but everyone else that listens to them says, yep, that's perfect, great mix. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's my very generic advice, is to do that. And in sort of make sure that you're communicating with as many folks as possible about music, because again, you'll learn so much not only from them giving feedback on your music, but if you start giving feedback on other people's music and engaging and interacting more, it is only going to help you in the long run. Hopefully that helps you out a little bit there. We will continue scrolling down and see if we have. So Michael asked a question earlier, which is how to make vocals for hip hop. And look, I don't make a lot of hip hop. I made one song where I did a bit of a rap verse, and I've got another song which is kind of a hip hop song, my song Lucky. But yeah, I don't do a lot of hip hop vocals, but the premise is basically the same with vocals. What you're looking for with vocals is a good vocal performance, an even vocal performance if you can. So try to, when you're recording with the mic, and hip hop can be hard for this, because if you're getting passionate and you're getting into it, you may be moving, especially if you're using a handheld mic, which a lot of folks recording hip hop vocals do, you may be moving your head around and moving. So try to keep an equal distance where possible to the microphone, so that all your words come in at the right level. If you do have some leveling problems, grab a compressor so once you've recorded it, compression can actually really help. So if you haven't used a compressor much before, or you're not familiar with compression, I've got a heap of videos here on the channel. Just search Pete Johns compression and you'll get a bunch of videos about it. But the basics of compression are, if you've got a vocal recording where there's some bits that are too loud and some bits too quiet, what compression does is it actually pushes the volume of those peaks, those louder parts, down, and then pulls everything up. So what actually eventually happens is that your louder parts stay at the same volume, but your quieter parts are pulled up. So compression is one of the key things for a vocal. You won't always need to use it, but especially on rap vocals and hip hop vocals, you might want to go pretty hard with the compression, because you want to be able to hear every word. Unlike a rock song where if it's just like blah, 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 like no one's listening to it, with rap vocals and with hip hop vocals, you generally want folks to hear every word. Every word's important because it's part of the song. Same for a singer-songwriter. Every word's pretty important because it's part of the story that you're telling through the song. So for hip hop vocals, to answer that question, make sure that your mic technique's good, that you're not getting too far away or too close to the mic, that you're recording it nice and clean, you've got a good quality mic and interface, and then after the fact, use some compression and even some EQ. So you might want to just use some EQ to boost up some of the frequencies where your voice is sitting, and maybe reduce down some of the frequencies if you're getting any of that background noise or interference. And go back to the start of the show where I answered a question about background noise if you want to jump into that. Question here from Sebastian Pukata. What is your favorite virtual synthesizer? Now, this is a great question, because I don't actually use a whole lot of synthesizers in my music. I use the Alchemy synth in GarageBand, to be honest, more than anything, which is just in there by default. If you've got any GarageBand, any device running GarageBand 2.3 or above, and you've got a device that can support it, you're going to have the Alchemy synth, and that has a whole bunch of really cool sounds, and I love playing around with those sounds. What I love about the Alchemy synth is when you're recording it, you can actually adjust the knobs and dials as you're playing. So if you're playing with one hand on, say, a MIDI keyboard, you can actually adjust. And I know it's the same with every synthesizer, but for Alchemy, it's really cool because you use the touch screen of your iPad or your iPhone while you're playing with the MIDI keyboard. And you can even do it, it's a bit more clunky, you can even do it with the touch screen, playing the keyboard on the touch screen and then moving the dials around. And then any changes you make will actually go into your track. So I use synth for pads mostly. So I'll hold down a chord and then I'll just sort of make sure that that chord is providing a pad. If you don't know about a pad is just like that, like strings or a synth sound or something that just sits there playing like one chord over maybe a couple of bars even, so that your melody is going over the top and your pad is just playing one note or a couple of notes that just sit underneath the mix. And it just adds a little bit more flavor to the mix as opposed to having nothing there and having that empty space. So probably not the best answer. Excuse me. Probably not the best answer for you, but yeah, that's what I use. Timothy says, I can't find your podcast show on the iPad podcast app. Yeah, I have some issues with this at the moment. So we're 2 episodes in and it is still not showing up. So it was supposed to have been submitted. It obviously hasn't got through the filters or whoever it is that needs to press a button or tick a box. So I'm following up on that. If you want to add it in manually, what you need to do is there's a link in the description of the YouTube video. So if you go over to my YouTube channel and find the video there, there is a link there to the RSS feed. And all you need to do is go add podcast by URL and then pop the URL in. So if you want to subscribe to it and get the updates every week, and yeah, you're watching it, so you're listening on your podcast app or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere like that, add it in manually and you'll be good to go. All right, question here from Dave Fiano. When did they start calling Porter Studios mixers? They record usually. Yeah, so Porter Studios. So Porter Studios was basically a mixer with a recorder. So the original Porter Studios, the Tascam Porter Studios, were a 4-track tape recorder with mixers and inputs that you could record into. They were kind of replaced by digital recorders. So there's those standalone digital recorders made by the likes of Zoom and others, where you can actually record directly in and it records to a hard drive, or these days an SD card, and you can actually record there. And then a mixer is basically like that, but without a recording interface. So most of your mixers just output either via USB that you then plug into your computer, or via a 1/4-inch stereo output, and then you can record that signal out of your mixer to your digital audio workstation or wherever you want to record it to. But the what's happening now is that it's actually a really cool new mixer interface, which is the Zoom LiveTrack L8. There's already the Zoom LiveTrack L12, but the L8 is like a very cost-effective mixer interface hybrid where it has the best of everything. You can record, you can use it like a standalone recorder, record to an SD card. You can send it out via USB and get not only the 2 tracks stereo, but all 8 tracks individually and record them separately as multi-tracks, which is very, very cool. And you can mix everything as well on the fly. And there's a whole bunch of mixing options and effects. So that's probably going to be a Studio Live Today studio purchase at some stage when they actually come to Australia. They're not actually even available in Australia. They've only just been released in the US, so and Japan. So maybe I need a trip to Japan. Any Japanese viewers, listeners out there want to hook me up? All right, let's continue on. Let us continue. Now we've got a comment. I thought I saw one. Daisy says, do you have a podcast on Anchor? Yes, so it is on Anchor as well. So if you are looking for the podcast, you can jump in and check it out on Anchor, or you can add it manually, as I mentioned before. It's a question here from Timothy, which is best MIDI controller for iPad. I know you said you don't use synths though. So I don't use synths a lot, but I do use the piano instruments in GarageBand, and I've just actually when I say picked up, I reached out to the company that makes Ravenscroft 275, which is a highly recommended piano app. Plenty of people have said you need to try this piano app. So because I'm cheeky, I reached out to the company and said, hey, everyone says I need to try this out. Any chance you want to provide a copy so that I can review it? So that'll be coming up here on the channel. But spoiler alert, it's an awesome piano sound. And yeah, I do add a lot of pianos. So I do have a couple of MIDI controllers that I use. I use an old version of what is now the M Audio key station, the 49 key version. And if you go to studiolivetoday.com/gear, you'll find a link to the Mark III version, which is similar to mine, but even better, even more options there. So that's probably what I recommend. I also have a Korg Micro Keys. So the Korg Micro Keys is like a very small, portable 49 key keyboard. So that's really cool. And I have a Casio AP250 digital piano, so which has USB MIDI out. So they're the controllers that I use. And I know a lot of folks really love the Akai though. So if you're looking for something that's got a lot of flexibility, the Akai 25 and 49 key controllers are very, very cool. And yeah, anything made by M Audio or Novation, you really can't go wrong in the world. It's ridiculous that for under $100 you can pick up a very high quality MIDI interface to control your sounds. Just make sure I haven't missed any other questions, and then we'll jump back over. Also got a quick question here from Professor Hater. Do you use Cakewalk? I don't use Cakewalk at the moment. On my PC, I use Reaper, which is my DAW of choice for PC recordings. Cakewalk or BandLab by Cakewalk, Cakewalk by BandLab, whatever they're calling it these days, is very, very cool. And yes, what I was trying to say, yeah, Mike, my buddy over at Creative Source, does a heap of videos. So if you want to learn Cakewalk, my recommendation, go to your Google search machine, type in Creative Source Cakewalk, and you will get a heap of videos that will help you out there. Gino DeReese here, hello, also from Chicago. I think we've got a few people from Chicago in here. Here you go, Studio Live Today, big in Chicago. I used to love my Tascam Porter Studio, so much fun. are the good old days. I know I could reminisce all day about my 4-track adventures, but we've got other questions to get to. So maybe we'll do that if we have some time at the end. We'll talk all about 4-track machines. I actually bought a 4-track machine, an old Yamaha the other day. When I say the other day, probably 2 years ago. It doesn't work. So if anyone's really handy and is in Australia and wants to fix my 4-track, then let me know. It's got problems with belts or something, which apparently is an easy fix, but I'm not handy when it comes to that kind of stuff. Question here from, now this is cool, Tom York Dance Guide is the channel, which I have to check out. Like, how cool does that sound for a channel? How can I access the sounds that are in the iOS version of GarageBand on my Mac? I'm using a MIDI keyboard with GarageBand on my Mac, but I noticed the iOS version has a way better sound library. What gives? Yeah, right? So this is something that I know my buddy Patrick over at the GarageBand Guide, who I had here on the show last week, he is a little frustrated about, because it seems like for the longest time, the GarageBand Mac version was so good, and the iOS version was like a cut down version that didn't have all the different features and sounds that the Mac version did. For whatever reason, probably because of the popularity of iPads and iPhones in the last sort of 3 to 4 years, the iOS version is getting all the love, and the Mac version hasn't had a really solid update for a few years. And I know that's frustrating for Mac users, and it's leading to questions like this, because there's a lot of new sound packs, a lot of new sound libraries, a lot of patches, and a lot of things on the iOS version that aren't necessarily over on the Mac version at the moment. I mean, I guess the advantage is with the Mac version, at least you can do things like buy entire packs of sounds and easily import them into your sound library on the Mac. Not so easy to do, not impossible, but not as easy to do on iOS. But the short version answer of this question is you can't really. What you can do is, if there's a loop or if there's a sound or there's something on iOS, what you can do is sample it. So create a loop yourself in GarageBand in iOS, export it as a WAV file, and import it into the Mac version. Now, you're not going to get like all the cool different ways to manipulate it, or it's not going to be like a proper Apple loop and all of those things. But yeah, there are ways to do it. But no, there's no easy way to say, hey, just transfer all of these cool loops from iOS over to Mac, which is a shame, because they're totally compatible. It's just Apple choosing not to provide that option. So go figure. What gives? I don't know. Yes, I'm sorry that I can't be of more assistance there. Question here from Ray Wolf. Says, hey Pete, love your GB videos. Thank you. Love that you watch them. For some reason, the new version won't let me export my project as a WAV file like it used to. It creates a file in the specified folder, but it's got this weird sort of blank looking icon and won't open or anything. Any ideas? Am I missing something? And I've already got back to Ray, because coincidentally, a week before I had, now I'm going to forget your name and I apologize. Please email me and abuse me and say I should remember your name. But someone raised this with me. And at the time I was saying, oh no, it's working fine for me. And they said, no, every time I use the save to files option in GarageBand, it doesn't save as a proper WAV file. It saves as this weird WAV file that won't open in anything. And I tried to replicate it. And when I tried it, it did the same thing. I got this weird WAV file that wasn't actually a WAV file. It looked like one. It was the same size as it should be, but it wasn't usable. iOS didn't recognize it. And what we worked out is that the one simple trick you need to do is, when you're exporting from GarageBand, instead of hitting save to files on the first share screen, hit open in. What it does then is it exports the file first, then it brings up a second share sheet where you hit save to files, and then it creates an actual working WAV file. So it's one extra step. You do the open in, it opens and then exports the file, you hit save to files, and it works. So for those GarageBand iOS users, and I think it might be the same in some other iOS apps, if you're having any trouble with saving a file or exporting a file in iOS, instead of hitting save to files, hit open in. It'll then do its exporting first. You can then choose where you want to save it to, and it should work for you. So hopefully that helps other folks out. And I probably need to do another video to explain that further, because yeah, it's happening a lot, and I'm starting to get more and more people messaging me and asking me about that. Let's continue on here. This one's from Rico Gonzalez. And it says, I just saw this doesn't work with a 9.7-inch iPad Pro. True or false? I get a knockoff version, but it doesn't charge my 9.7. And sorry, this is referencing the Lightning to USB adapter for an iPhone or iPad. He goes on, also, I can't hear my metronome come through from my interface to my DAW. I'm hoping when I get a legit camera connection today, it will fix this issue. Now, the metronome not coming through is a little bit strange, but yeah, depends what you're actually using to output. So if you're using an audio interface or if you're using a USB microphone, make sure though that, if you do plug in an interface to your iPad or your iPad Pro, that you're then using whatever you plugged in to monitor. So what happens is when you attach an audio interface or a microphone that has a headphone output to your iPhone or iPad, that becomes both the input and the output. So this is where folks kind of get tripped up, is that they'll have, if you've got an iPad that has a headphone jack and you plug in a USB audio interface, the headphone jack on the iPad becomes basically defunct. So you now need to plug into the headphone jack on the audio interface or on the microphone to get your output. So you can do multi-tracking and overdubs and all the rest of that good stuff. So keep that in mind. Yeah. The issue around, and I've mentioned it a couple of times now, I know I sound like I'm a shill for Apple, but I promise that it is just my experience. You can spend $10 or $15 and get the generic versions from eBay or Amazon that may work sometimes for a period of time. This is your USB to Lightning adapters. Or you can spend $30 to $40 and get the genuine Apple Lightning to USB 3 adapter. Now, I have gone both routes, so I've taken the pain to try and help you out. I keep coming back to the fact that the only device that works first time and every time with every iPhone and iPad and every device that is class compliant is the genuine Apple Lightning to USB 3 adapter. I know it costs a lot of money. Here in Australia, it's $65 for this piece of plastic. So yes, I know it costs a lot of money, but I would rather spend that money once and know that I have a reliable connection, because there is nothing more frustrating than being partway through recording and having your hardware fail and not be able to finish that recording. You do not want to be in the middle of the best vocal take or the best epic guitar solo of your life and have it cut out because you saved yourself $20 on an audio adapter 3 years ago. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's definitely worth considering. But thank you, Rico, for your question, and I hope that helped out. We'll continue on here. David Danzig, love that name. Cool names today. Awesome video. Just one question. I have an iPhone 7 which has no headphone jack. Would the iRig 2 be fine on the iPhone 7 if I use it with the 3.5 millimeter to Lightning dongle with the iRig 2? I only want to use it for recording my guitar. Thanks. So the answer to this one is yes. If you have an iPhone that doesn't have a doesn't have a headphone jack, which is any iOS device, any iPhone from iPhone 7 onwards does not have a headphone jack. It only has a Lightning connector. So what you need to use is a Lightning to 3.5mm jack. So what this does is it converts the digital, basically doing the digital to analog conversion so that you can actually plug directly in. Now what this does is it turns your Lightning port into a 3.5mm TRRS jack. So this is the key point. This is what you want to know. And that means that you can use things like headsets, which have a microphone as well as headphones built in, because you've got those 4 different connections for the ground, the microphone, and the stereo output. So what that also means is that you can use devices like iRigs and the Tascam IXZ or IXZ, which I use, which use a TRRS connection. So yes, the short answer is yes, you can. You can hook up an analog audio input device like the original iRig or the iRig 2 or the Tascam IXZ, and you can hook those up using that little adapter. So it is a cheap and effective way to get a decent quality input and output from your newer iPhone, as well as you could use something similar with a USB-C on a Gen 3 iPad Pro if you wanted to. The challenge there is that you're only going to get analog sound. So for playing guitar, in my experience, and your mileage may vary, but in my experience, when you're playing guitar through an analog connection and you start using amp sims and effects and stomp boxes and pedals, you can get a lot of crunchy interference. You can get a lot of noise introduced to the signal. So that's where a digital device like something like the iRig Pro series or the iRig Pro IO or the Apogee Jam or these other ones that actually use the Lightning connection or a USB connection are a lot better quality. So my answer to the question is yes, you can. You can hook up using that device. My secondary answer is even when you can afford it, you have the budget to do it, I would highly recommend one of the iRig HD or iRig Pro series, because then you will get a digital sound and your guitar recordings will become just that much more epic. So I hope that helps you and anyone else who has this same question out. We'll continue on here. Skies Beat says, why is DistroKid asking me for my tax identification number? I can't view my earnings anymore. So we were talking earlier about Amuse and DistroKid. So let's just give you the quick 30-second version of what they are. So Amuse and DistroKid are online distribution platforms. So if you're looking to release your music to Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, all the places, you can actually upload them to a distributor, and then the distributor will then send your information on to all the stores, and then your songs get released on all those stores. So that's pretty cool, and that's a good option for you to get your music out there. Now, DistroKid have recently changed because they must have got a tap on the shoulder from someone in the US there. So now what you need to do is fill out details, which go into, I'm going to get this wrong, but I believe it's what's called a W-2. So if you're a US citizen, you've got to give them your, I think, social security or some sort of tax identification number. If you're a foreign person like me, if you're a foreigner, then you need to give them whatever your country's tax identification number. For us here in Australia, it is a tax file number. I'm sure it has different names in the UK and Europe and Canada and all the other places, but it's not a big scary thing. It is just so that DistroKid can ensure that they're meeting their obligations, and that if you're suddenly making $100,000 from your music as income, that they know that that is actually taxable income. So yes, musical income. If you're making money from music and you're a professional musician, then that is income. And I know a lot of people get shocked by that. They're like, but I just made $100 from people streaming my music. Surely that's not income. Yeah, talk to your accountant and make sure that that's not income. Sometimes it may not be. Most of the time it is. So everything that so all the revenue that I generate through Studio Live today is income. So yes, the tax man wants their piece of that, and it's the same for you if you are releasing music, because yeah, if you're releasing music on Spotify and iTunes and Apple Music and other people are purchasing that or streaming it and you're getting paid for it, I hate to break it to you, but you're now a professional musician. The definition of professional musician or professional anything is someone who gets paid for doing a thing. Yes, so you can argue that it's a hobby, you can argue that you're not a pro. The tax departments don't seem to particularly take that same view. So keep that in mind when you're getting on there. We'll take one more pre-roll question here, and then we'll jump back live and say hello to the folks that are there and make sure that we're answering any questions. If you are here on the YouTube video and you're getting some value out of this, you can tap the like button there, and that just tells me that you want me to keep doing these weekly shows and that you're getting some value. I love a Q&A show because sometimes you get answers to questions you didn't know you even had, but then you're like, oh, that's cool. I'm filing that away for when I have that same question. So if, like me, you love a good Q&A show, hit the like. And if you're listening to the podcast, yeah, shoot me an email, pete@studiolivetoday.com. Always love hearing what folks are doing. And if you've got any questions and you want a direct answer, yeah, send me an email and I'll do my very best. I don't have hours to answer in-depth questions, but if it's a quick question, shoot me an email, and in a couple of days, you'll usually get a response, hopefully that may help you. Alrighty, Benjamin Hawkhurst says, serious question, what are you calling competitive volume? So this is a video about mastering, and I mentioned competitive volume. So he says, what are you talking about? Is it the volumes of the tracks competing with each other or something else, like the whole song competing on the iTunes store or competing with other producers? Peak volume without clipping. I'm new to mastering, so the question is serious. 100%, and it is actually a great question. And sometimes what I try to do here on Studio Live today is keep things as simple as possible. So you notice every time I say DAW, I will usually say digital audio workstation afterwards. And if I'm doing a more beginner level video, I'll say, and that is the software that you use to record your audio in multiple tracks. Reason being is that I think too often we just jump in and assume that folks have knowledge of recording and of audio. And if you're starting out, you may not. And that's absolutely fine. I've always said the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. And more often than not, a bunch of other folks have exactly that same question, but they're too nervous to ask it. So my response to that is, if you have a question, ask it, because you will be doing yourself and probably a bunch of other folks a favor by asking it. And the reason I do this Q&A show now is that I was answering probably upwards of 100 questions a week directly back to individual folks. And I thought there's got to be a more efficient way to do this. I'm going to take the most common questions and answer them here so that everyone gets the benefit. Anyway, Pete, you're getting sidetracked. How about you answer this question, buddy? Right. So competitive volume, what I mean there is when you are mastering, and then releasing a song. Well, let's take a step back. When you record a song, the next process is mixing it, which means getting all the volumes matched, adding in your effects, and getting it to that sort of final mix phase, which is like, yep, this song sounds great. This is what I want to release. Mastering is the final process where you're just adding some enhancements. And one of the main things you want to do with mastering is called limiting. So limiting means increasing the volume so that it is competitive with other songs. Now, when I say competitive, I mean that it's going to sit nicely. If you had a playlist, say you're a rocker, you're creating rock songs, and you've got a playlist that's Foo Fighters, You, and then Muse. Well, you don't want the Foo Fighters song to be and then your song comes in, it's like and then Muse come in like, so you want to make sure that your volume is going to be competitive. Now, does that mean you need to crush it and just have these square waves, this sausage of audio that is so crushed that it sounds lifeless? No, but it does mean that if you aren't hitting that 0 dB, you aren't hitting that maximum volume at all, and the tracks that are being listened to by people listening to your music are, then you need to do something about that. Now, flip that around. If you're doing a singer-songwriter song, you don't need to go as intense with your limiting, because other singer-songwriter songs are going to be a bit more subtle, and yours may actually sound weird if it comes in and it's too full. So consider that. Doing some EDM, some trap beats, anything like that, well, you want to probably pump that compressor and that limiter up a little bit more, because every other producer is doing that same thing. Now, again, do you have to do everything because every other producer is doing exactly that? No, not necessarily. But the reality of it is that if people are listening to a Spotify playlist and your music comes on after someone else's, and suddenly the energy is sort of sucked out of it, they're more likely to hit the skip button. And that is not what you want to happen. You want folks to be in there doing their thing and grooving to your tunes. So great question there, Benjamin. And again, I'm sure a lot of other folks have a similar question as well. We'll jump back over to the live chat here and say good day to some folks that are here live. Bubba, you are a gentleman and a scholar, has just thrown a super chat my way, $20 there. So I really do appreciate that. It really does help me out here on the channel. He says, excellent content once again. Thanks, Pete. I really appreciate that, Bubba. Thank you so much. That is very cool. And Bubba has been sending me some of his songs to take a listen to, and yeah, they are exceptionally good. So I think I've got an email waiting from you. I will jump over after the show, Bubba, and take a listen. I think there's another track there that I want to take a listen to. So thank you for that. We've got a question here from Timothy. It says, Pete, love your weekly podcast. Would you say you prefer iPad over PC and Reaper? Do you find the power of the laptop over the iPad a deal changer for those of us thinking of completely switching for iPad? This is a really good question, and I could rant for probably an entire show just on this question alone. I will resist the urge to do so, but I'm almost, so for my music production, I'm close to 100% on iPad and iPhone. So iOS is where it's at for me. And for my music, I'm loving recording on iPhone and iPad. I love the flexibility. I love the convenience. And here's the thing. Earlier on, the quality wasn't there, and the flexibility in terms of what you could do with the tracks and the effects and the plugins wasn't there for iOS. That's kind of changed now. So the way I look at it is, if I plug in my Steinberg UR22C, the new interface that I have, I can plug that in through a Lightning to USB 3 adapter, and then I can plug in my microphones. I can use my Audio-Technica AT2020. I can plug in my Guitar Direct. I can do everything I need to do, and the quality I get through there is the same. It's the same digital audio quality, right? So quality, tick. Flexibility, well, I can take my mixes on my iPhone, and I can be sitting on the bus, I can be walking in the park, and I can be listening to my mixes. Yeah, I'm on headphones, but you know what? I do a lot of stuff on headphones. It's okay. So that's sort of tick for convenience there. And then ease of use is the big one for me. I find it so simple to grab my iPad and just plug in and go, as opposed to with my PC, for some reason, and it may be just because I haven't spent a lot of time, and Reaper is really good. It's really flexible. But when you're faced with that blank Reaper screen, you've got to set it up. You've got to add your input. You've got to make sure that you've got the right settings on there. And yeah, if I saved templates and I did other things, it would be a lot easier. But I just tend to find that anything that gets in my way, I'm very like immediate. I like to get things done straight away. So what I love about the iPad and the iPhone is that there's no barrier to entry for my creativity. And I was talking to someone about this during the week, and they were basically saying that people who are musicians first and then recording engineers second tend to like things that are visual and simple and easy. So they'll like the cakewalk software. They'll like GarageBand. They'll like using iPad and iPhone because they've got a good song that they want to record, and the actual recording process is kind of secondary to that. For people who are more into the actual mixing, mastering, recording side of it, but also happen to play music, so more of the producers, they like more of the flexible options that you get from a PC or a Mac and having that whole interface. So it kind of depends which side of the fence you sit on. I think the reason a lot of folks here are like me and like mobile recording is that they are musicians first and foremost, and they love the idea of just grabbing your guitar, plugging in, recording a track, grabbing a microphone, plugging in, recording a track, taking that mix with you on the road. You've got an idea for a synth part, you tap it in on your screen as you're walking around. And then you can try it out. You can try different chords. You can try different BPM. You can do different things while you're out. You can then send it over to your iPad when you come back to the studio. So yeah, I know I'm ranting now, but hopefully that semi-answers your question as to why I go mobile most of the time, and that my PC here in Reaper, like I opened it the other day and it said, you've got like 17 version updates on Reaper. And I'm like, wow, it's been that long since I've actually used it. All righty. Now, Barry Smith, you've got a question here, and I think it's already been answered by Case here, one of my wonderful listeners. I heard about the Steinberg UR22C. Can I hook that up to my iPad? You can indeed, my friend, and there's a video here on the channel. If you want to check out, just go to studiolivetoday.com or search Pete Johns Steinberg URC, and you'll find my video. I've only done a first look video, but I did plug it into my iPhone to check it out and to make sure it all works. So yes, iPhone or iPad, the key is you want one of these. You want a Lightning to USB 3 adapter, and you probably also want a powered USB hub. And again, check out studiolivetoday.com/gear if you are looking for that. Hello to Marissa Miranda. Still having issues with my NT1 mic on my iPhone. Could I have been given a dud, or should I get a different mic? So Marissa is one of our wonderful members over at the GarageBand Users Facebook group. Hello, big shout out to my friends over there. Yes, so Marissa's having some trouble connecting up an NT1 mic. So if anyone has any ideas or suggestions, so she's plugging in and turning on the phantom power using, I believe, a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, and then you're just getting a really low level or no sounds at all coming through. So it's not giving you the volume that you need. Now, the NT1 mic is usually really good, usually is fine, and especially through something like a Scarlett 2i2, you should be getting really good level coming through. So it may be that the microphone has an issue itself. It's really hard to diagnose these things. If you've plugged it in, if you've got phantom power enabled, if you've tried turning the input gain up and you're pushing it up high to the max and you're still not getting that sound through, then yeah, there may be some sort of issue. So I'm sorry to hear that you're still having trouble. But yes, that is yeah, something that can often happen. Question here from Daisy, which is, how often would you recommend I release with a Muse? So it really depends. How often should you release music? It depends how often you're producing music. So I tend to release a song usually most months, sometimes every second month. It depends on what I'm working on and the other things that are going on. But yeah, it is a good idea, especially when you're starting out. So I release less now because I do more tutorial videos. But if I was just releasing music, I would actually be getting as much out as possible. Now, I know a lot of folks will say quality over quantity and don't just sort of burn it and don't rush your songs and don't get things out. I agree with that to a certain extent, but I also think that there's a danger in holding on to songs too long, taking too long to mix them. I think the 80-20 rule applies here, that you get 80% of the benefits done in the first 20% of time, and then a lot of folks spend another 80% of time just tweaking it from 80 up to 100. Now, if you want to do that and you want to spend the time, 100% fine. But again, the benefits you get from sharing your music and getting feedback about your music from other people actually outweighs trying to aim for that perfection and spending too much time on it. And what you'll find is you get better at everything. So it's not just saying make sure that you get your music out so that that you're going to get better at the recording and the mixing. You'll learn things about your own songwriting process. So you'll learn about songwriting, you'll learn about arranging, that mysterious art of what instruments to use when and how things come in, what chord progressions you use, what key signatures work for you and for your voice if you're a singer. Yeah, there's so many things that you get, so much great information you get simply by getting out there and releasing your music and sharing with folks. If you're wondering, how do I share with people? Go online. So if you're a Facebook user, there's heaps of Facebook groups for all sorts of different musical styles. And we've even got a GarageBand users group, as I mentioned before, for folks using GarageBand. And there's Reddit forums that you can jump into. There's a bunch of other forums, the Audio Buzz forums. There's the, I can't even remember the names of all of them now, but there's heaps of places that you can share music online. The key though is don't just release and share your music. Make sure you're engaging with other people who are sharing their music as well, because that is one of the best ways to make relationships, make friends, and share your love of music with other folks. And you can help other people out at the same time as you are getting help with your music. So thank you for that. And Andrea says, I ordered a Steinberg UR22C just today. Yay. Well, you will love it, Andrea. It is honestly, like, I've had a Steinberg UR12 for a long, long time, and it's been my interface of choice, and I recommend it highly. The Steinberg UR22C just takes it to a next level. Like, yes, I'm a Steinberg fanboy. I'll 100% admit it. But the quality you get, the 2 preamps you get in there, the D-Pre preamps from Yamaha, they are amazing. You have the dual power ability, so you can power it up directly from USB bus power or from a portable battery. Like any 5-volt supply can power this sucker up, so you can use it anywhere you go. And yeah, just MIDI input, 1/4-inch balanced output. Like, I could go on and on. But yeah, it is. If someone said to me, I got $200, what's the first thing I buy for my home studio right now? I would say Steinberg UR22C all the way. Rightio, we are coming towards the end here. If you are here live, please throw your questions now. Speak now or forever hold your peace, and we will jump in and answer some more pre-recorded questions here. A bit of quick fire questions because we are running late. So let's jump back over. A question here from My Views on Tech. How do you create those videos with the music like the one at 9:25? So this was one of my videos where I showed how to create a Facebook page for your music, and I actually demoed, I showed one of my songs that I created, and I used the Visibel app, which is by Clevgrand. So Visibel by Clevgrand, it's an iOS app. It is very super cool, and what you can do is bring in different visual elements. You can bring in like a waveform, like a visual display of your song. You can put your album artwork, you can put background images, and you can create a very cool visualization of your song. So if you are an iPad, iPhone creator, or even if you're not, and you just want to send your final WAV file over to your iPhone or iPad, you can create some very cool visualizations. And it just means if you're sharing your music on places like Facebook and YouTube, that instead of it just being a static image, or instead of you having to go to a heap of effort to create a lyric video or some other sort of moving animated video, you can just throw it into Isabel, change a few settings, and then you're good to go. You can jump in and get done. This is a long question here, and we've actually answered it. This is great. So this is the question I thought we'd already had. So the difference between a USB mixer and a USB audio interface. So yeah, we've basically answered this. The USB audio interface and USB mixers can do basically the same thing. My recommendation is, if you are looking for something to use live, so if you're doing live performances, live streaming, live podcasting, anything with live, anything where it's important that you can dial in the sound and mix your sound on the way in, lean towards a mixer. If you just want to record your sound and you're going to do all of your processing, so you're recording a podcast, you're recording music, you're recording videos, and everything is going to be after the fact, then an audio interface is 100% cool. I love the flexibility of a mixer because I do a lot of live work, and then it can also be used for your recording as well. And I have the Samson MixPad MXP 124 and the Steinberg UR22C, as we just talked about, are my 2 selections at the moment, and they are both listed over at studiolivetoday.com/gear that you can check out over there. Junior G, how did you make the iPhone screen rotate in the home page? Now, this is a weird one because a lot of folks have asked me this. So your home screen of your iPhone is portrait mode, yeah? So you've got your iPhone and the home screen's portrait mode. Now, what you can actually do with some iPhones is if you rotate them to the side, they turn into landscape mode. But here's the problem. It only works with Plus and Max model iPhones. So for whatever reason, Apple have decided you're not going to be allowed to have landscape mode unless you have a larger device. So go figure that, but that's what they've decided. So that's the answer to that question. Unfortunately, if you have a larger one, you'll be good to go. If you have a smaller iPhone, not so much. So sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Quick question here. Now, I've got a new video coming out. There's a question from Beth. How do you format the hard drive to FAT or a FAT format? So I did a video about hard drives. So if you've got USB hard drives that you want to connect to your iPhone or iPad, how do you do it? How do you format them? What do you need to do? Well, what you actually need to do is make sure that they're not in NTFS format. So if they're a Windows drive and you're a Windows user, you might have drives in NTFS format. That won't work. If you do have that, what you need to do is copy anything off them that you have and then reformat them. So plug them into your Windows PC and then right-click on the drive, go Format, and format it as exFAT. Extended FAT is the format that you want, and that will then be compatible. I have another video coming out on the YouTube channel on studiolivetoday.com this week, which will give you all the information that you need to know, everything you needed to know about connecting flash drives and hard drives to your iPhone or iPad, but we're afraid to ask. So keep an eye out for that one. My man Broke Chain here. Apologize for the off-topic comment, but was wanting to know if the LRC5 plugin is good for EQ on vocals, or do I use something else? I do love the LRC5 EQ. Probably my favorite EQ plugin for iOS, paid or otherwise. And if you haven't checked out the LRC5 plugin and you're using GarageBand or any other DAW on your iPhone or iPad, I highly recommend it. It is a 5-band EQ, so it's a visual EQ that you can, a parametric EQ. It's got all sorts of different shapes. You can use it to use shelves and high pass filters, low pass filters, peaks, anything. You can change the Q, which means how narrow or wide your actual EQ curve is. It's just very, very cool, and it works for everything. So I use it on drums, guitars, vocals, anything that you're recording is a great plugin to try. And if you want to check out a video, if you search my name, Pete Johns, and LRC5 over on the YouTubes, you will find that plugin there. We are going to have to finish up. I know we've raced through it. I felt like I've only been here 10 minutes, but it's been nearly an hour. So we are going to have to finish up here, and we'll just check quickly if we've got any final questions. No, we've just got someone. So hello to you. I make beats MPC live. Thank you. Was about to ask the same question. So yeah, there you go. Just proof that answering these questions live here is a good idea, because it means that yeah, other folks that may have those same questions, they get them answered. And once again, if you did get some value out of this, if I pre-answered some future questions for you that you may have in the future, then please go ahead and hit the like button. If you're here on YouTube, if you're caught the video version, if you're listening on the audio version, hello to you. You can reach out to me. You can head over to studiolivetoday.com, where you'll find links to all of the social media. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, and a few different places. So you can find all of the details there, studiolivetoday.com. Thanks again for watching and listening. I hope you got some value out of this one, and I'll catch you next time.